Welcome to the Purpose Cycle podcast. This podcast helps you unlock the secrets to success. Welcome to season 3. Here is what we've got in store for you today.
I had really thought that this was part of that realization phase where I was just not ready. Like I needed more time. I needed more spiritual, personal healing in terms of dealing with the loss. He had open heart surgery when he was 6 days old. So our plans to, bring home a baby and I don't know, as a mom, as a woman, you have all these ideas of what motherhood's going to look like and how that's going to play out. You plan a nursery, you dream up this kid's life until they're 18 and beyond.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Purpose Cycle podcast. I'm joined this week by an author, speaker, blogger, but most importantly to me, a friend, a role model, and above all, a mother. She empowers women to find purpose in pain. And I've been looking forward to recording this episode because I feel like there's a really special message that we can share today. Please welcome everybody, Candice. How you doing, Candice?
I'm doing well. I love how you guys say my name.
Yes, Candice in American.
Candice, but you can say Candice because that always makes me miss all of our coaches over the years.
Thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, we go way back, 8 years now since we met. And would you like to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and obviously our connection as well?
Sure. First and foremost, I'm a wife. That's probably my most important role, and a mother. And I spend most of my day, well, thanks to COVID, homeschooling my kids. So I homeschool. I am a teacher for community college. I am a writer and a blogger, and really just trying to pursue what I believe is my purpose and my calling. And that is really just to bring hope to those who are in a really dark moment. And so we've launched a business, and that's exactly what our mission is to bring hope and healing to people who feel hopeless and heartbroken.
I know, yeah, it really is an incredibly powerful message and an inspiring story in terms of what you've done in amidst sort of the situation that you and your husband were in. Obviously, I met you 8 years ago, fresh-faced off a plane from England to come and said, 9 months, I think it was, I spent in North Carolina, and I stayed with you for quite some time. So I do appreciate your hospitality. And it was just a fantastic experience to meet the whole family and experience really what your dynamic and everything was about. And obviously, when did you begin the journey in terms of writing the book? Because this obviously came after I was staying with you guys.
Oh yeah, much after. By the time we had you, by the time you stayed with us, I had already felt the calling to write the book.
Yeah.
But I don't like to do hard things. So I avoided it and I refused to do it. And I think probably one of the biggest reasons why I refused to do it is because I didn't want to have to deal with what I had to personally reflect on in order to get the words into a book. So although I felt like I actually, when thinking about your purpose cycle, I had really thought that this was part of that realization phase where I was just not ready. Like I needed more time. I needed more spiritual, personal healing in terms of dealing with the loss to really understand how to help other people, because you certainly cannot help someone else if you are not okay yourself. And so although I think you probably thought I was fine and everyone else probably thought I was fine because I really had a mentality of fake it till you make it. Even after all those years, and although I wasn't depressed like I had been in the beginning years, I was still grappling and dealing with all the things I felt about why this had to happen, and the struggling of, I think everybody deals with that when they have something hard. Like, why did this have to happen to me? And so really just that pull, that back and forth pull of trying to figure that out and growing through that, and really just not wanting to do it. So I ignored it for about 10 years. So from the time I felt like this is what I was supposed to do, I ignored it for 10 years.
Wow.
Because sometimes it's just really hard to do certain things. And plus I felt so unqualified. I mean, what makes me think I can write a book? So sure, I'm a teacher, and sure, I have life experiences, but the publishing world was something so unknown that it's can be quite scary to step into something so big.
I can certainly agree with that. The imposter syndrome is huge. I quite often suffer from imposter syndrome. I mean, even from the time when I spent out there in America, when I was in charge of coaches and different things, I was thinking, why me? Why is it like, who's put their trust in me? Why am I so qualified? And it sort of carried on really into the teaching world. And I've always felt like I've always wanted to go and do these things and go above and beyond, but I've always felt like a bit of an imposter in those situations as well. I mean, it could be a human nature kind of thing where we always at some point do feel like this if we're in a sort of discomfort, but a good form of discomfort because we're trying something new. And you mentioned about the realization there. That's the biggest part of the book so far. And there's a good reason behind that, because obviously we have to do a lot of self-reflection, self-healing, and learn a lot about ourselves before we can even move forward and process things. I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit later. The sort of aspiration and the calling to write a book. Now, you are somebody, and you've mentioned this in the book as well, but from personal experience, I know you like to plan things. You like to have it all down and, and all there in structure. So was this calling a little bit out of structure? And like, how did that affect you?
It was 100% out of the structure. It was not in my plans to do that. And I think that was probably the struggle too, was I live such a meticulously planned life that that's honestly, it's a strength, but it's also a weakness of mine, because then when things get thrown in, like my son's last weekend, that was not in the plans. That was not something I had planned to do and spend 7 hours doing. And so when things like that get thrown in, sometimes it can be really hard for me to readjust and just move, I guess. So for the book, when it finally happened and just sort of things lined up, multiple people mentioned the book, I was listening to a sermon, I was at church, and the pastor had said, sometimes God calls you to do something and you say no, but don't worry, God has call waiting. I thought, no, this is not happening. I'm not doing. My sister and my best friend the day before had the same conversation with me about what about this book that I had said I was going to write, and I never did. It forced me to have to say, okay, it's now or never. I need to be obedient and I need to do what I'm supposed to do. This is part of my purpose. And if through and make it into something, am I fulfilling my purpose? And part of knowing that you're in your purpose is having satisfaction and feeling fulfilled and having a joy that you cannot describe. And we had picked the word joy for our word of the year, because I was struggling to really truly find joy in my life. And although, I think joy and happiness are two completely different things. You can be happy about things that's fun is one of my 3 values: fun, laughter. I want happiness around our life, and I want my kids to live in a life that's happy. And although there's going to be trials and tribulations, you can still find the good in everything. But joy is something completely different. And I think it's because joy is attached to your purpose. And if you are not living in your purpose, you are not going to find that true, pure joy. And so for me, it was just an accumulation of things that I finally realized, okay, God is telling me that I need to just do this. I need to trust no matter how hard it is and just out and just do it. And I think for me, finally saying yes to doing that changed everything. It was still not easy. It was still 100% difficult. I mean, for like months, not even just the writing was hard, but just the writing was hard because it's so vulnerable. I mentioned a few minutes ago that I was really depressed. So I guess we should probably tell a little bit about the story for your listeners. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think about the aspiration phase as well and things like that will come in with the throwing plans off, because this is how the story started for you. You very much had a plan of where you were going with your teacher training, and then, you know, what you were going to do with your career. And then the plan started to deviate slightly.
Okay. So so the plan was, my husband and I got married. We were on a 5-year plan. We were going to wait 5 years and have children. We were going to like get our careers, you know, going. And I was a teacher, and oh my gosh, as a child, the things that I really wanted in life was to be married, have a family, and be a great teacher. I had great teachers growing up, and I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be these people who inspired me, encouraged me. That's what I wanted, was to be that teacher. And so I was living in like the greatest part. I was married. I was, you know, I had this great job. I loved what I was doing. And it was a month after being married, we get pregnant. So we find out like 2 months later, and that threw everything off. But we, you know, we were good. We were fine. Yes, it was not exactly what we planned, but we remade new plans. And then when our son was born, he threw everything off again, because not only was it, you know, the realization that we're having a child with medical issues, but it was everything that came along with those medical issues. So he was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, which is a very severe congenital heart defect that they should have detected in an ultrasound, because normally around 20 weeks, you have an ultrasound and they count the chambers in the heart. And I don't remember that ever happening. We must not have done it, because there was not the fourth chamber, or the bottom left chamber was extreme. They would have not been able to detect it on an ultrasound. Okay. So he had open heart surgery when he was 6 days old. So our plans to, you know, bring home a baby, and I don't know, as a mom, as a woman, you like have all these ideas of what motherhood's going to look like and how that's going to play out. You plan a nursery, you plan, man, you like dream up this kid's life until they're 18 and beyond. You have these ideas of what they're going to become and what that's going to look like. And so for us, those plans came to a complete halt. He was airlifted to a different hospital. My husband had to go by himself. I was left at the first hospital. He had open heart surgery when he was 6 days old. Even then I was planning like, okay, they told us 2 weeks, like, buddy, you're going to be home in 2 weeks. Like, this is what we're doing. These are the plans, stick to the plans. But, you know, life has its own idea. And he unfortunately went into cardiac arrest about 18 hours after he was, after his surgery. And that reshifted everything again. And so it was literally living moment by moment. We never knew, you know, what was going to happen next and how long this meant. And I know you follow the Panthers. Do you follow Greg Olson at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see his post? He made an Instagram yesterday. So his son, one of his sons, TJ, was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome.
Yeah.
And he has had the 3 surgeries, because it is a series of 3 surgeries. He's had the 3 surgeries. I want to say he's 8, but I could be really wrong on that. But he is now needing what they believe is going to be a heart transplant. His heart is no longer functioning the way it needs to. And so I was struck by that when I read that the other day, because that could have been our life, having this constant worry and this constant battle with, and I'm a planner. That would have been very difficult for me to have that, that constant worry.
Right, yeah, I didn't know what it was for. I saw on the Panthers Instagram for TJ, play for TJ and all of this. So yeah, I didn't realize. So obviously that's quite close to home as well, being in Charlotte where you live in. And it was what interested me in terms of reading the book about signals, and it was something that a lot of people may come across in life and might not actually pick up on. But you had quite a few different signals or signs. You had this worry. And there was things such as the insurance. You'll be able to obviously expand on that. And obviously then yourself and Brandon were taking a walk through a graveyard as well. There were little things that kept happening that played on your mind a little bit. And I think a lot of women who may be listening in, who have either yet to experience pregnancy or may have experienced it, may have had kinds of worries that they may not have voiced because they felt, I'm just being ridiculous. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's just something about a mother's intuition. I think we're given that. That's a gift to us to really be able to look around you and see the things that you need to see. So for us, so I'm trying to back up. We had a insurance agent come in and meet with us, and they sit down individually. I don't know how that works in the UK, but they come and they meet with you and you're signing up for your insurance. And so he had said, look, we have this, I see you're pregnant. We have this insurance that covers ICU coverage. So if something were to happen to you or your baby, ICU coverage would be covered. And of course, you're paying for that. It was $11 a month or something. And this poor agent had no idea. I had no idea what was going to happen. But I'm so thankful that we got that insurance, because that covered just the ICU stay. So just to be in an ICU bed, I want to say it was $1,500 a day just for the bed space, not for anything else, just the bed space in an ICU. So that's a lot of money when you're looking at 52 days in ICU. That's a lot of money. And that was covered. So just that bed space being covered by that specific insurance was huge. It was a huge relief for us. So there was that. I just kept thinking there was something wrong, but I really thought he was going to have a cleft lip. I don't know why I thought that, but I just thought it was going to be, and in the United States, that's a pretty minor thing now. We can, there's surgeries and there's things that we can do. But for whatever reason, that's what I kept thinking. It was that. And so I remember when I saw his face and saw that it was completely perfect, I was like, oh, okay, I can breathe. There was that. There was the weird thing. We walked through a cemetery to talk about that in the book. And I was very pregnant, and we were walking our dog, and we just kind of cut through the cemetery that someone had told us about. And so we cut through the cemetery, and everything around us was children, everything. And I remember saying to Brandon, I can't imagine ever having to bury a child. And that's exactly what we ended up having to do. But so there was that. The day before he was born, we were induced. And the night before, I was sitting in a chair and Brandon was putting together this pack and play thing. And I said to him, I feel like we're having a baby tomorrow, but I don't feel like we're bringing him home. And it was just those kind of little things, just so random that no one says.
Yeah, right. People would think, well, why are you saying that? That was so ridiculous. But if you've got that feeling, then you should really voice it to somebody.
Yeah. And I feel like I remember voicing that I thought something was wrong and to one of my teacher friends. And she just said, oh, I'm sure it's just, for your first child, I'm sure these are just normal things that you worry about, that something's wrong. But I really think that it was preparing me for the fact that there was something wrong, these preparations. But, in retrospect, I also, worried about all my other ones, probably because of what we went through. I did worry, and there was nothing. And there were very minor things that were wrong, so I don't know. I wouldn't want to like encourage someone to really like hound on their worries, because that's not exactly helpful either.
No.
But if you really like like have this deep feeling that something's wrong, I would bring it up and get it checked out, because it's not going to hurt anything to have an extra ultrasound, or to voice that to your doctor.
Yeah, it was. But I just found it really, like, not interesting, probably the wrong word, but it was just, obviously quite strange how it seemed to happen. You picked up on these signals, and it was kind of, you found this even when you were in ICU. You walked past a mother in the corridor coming out of the ICU who had just turned off the life support and had to go through that. And again, I think even at that point, you had the hope and the love that this would be okay, because in your plan, this was what was going to happen. So how did you deal with the worries? And I mean, you've already mentioned that you felt like it was preparing you, and that's a way that you can frame it so it doesn't consume you, because like you said, it's not helpful to let worry and bad feelings consume you. But how did you sort of process these different things? Or did you?
So initially,
Did it come a bit? Sorry, did it come a little bit later on?
no, I was definitely. So initially, we had lots of family around us, and so there was a lot of distraction. So I guess I would say initially in the first several weeks, because there was just so much going on, so many unknowns, so many family, and I'm a hostess because you've lived with us. I want to make sure everybody's okay all the time, and that's just my nature. And so even in the hospital setting, I want to make sure that everybody is okay. And I want to, when people came to visit, I wanted to make sure that they were okay, because seeing him, chest open, his chest was opened for weeks after surgery. No one, when people walk in the ICU and they expect to see a tiny baby in an isolette with, tubes, but they don't expect to see a baby with their chest open. That is not something it was shocking when we walked in, and we were prepared for what we were going to see.
Yeah.
So I think, I was constantly trying to make sure everybody was okay and making sure that everybody else was fine. So I think I really didn't start dealing with it until, and really I was delusional. I really thought they're fixing it and he's going to be home. I had not quite grasped the concept that this may not be okay. Like, we may not make it home. It was, this is what's going to happen, and we're going to be okay, and we're going to get through this, and a lot of denial. And then as time wore on and family started going home, and I made my mom go home, really so that I could just start processing it on my own. And it was then that I think I really started grasping with the reality of, this is really hard, and he is suffering. And where's the line? Brandon and I were very clear with doctors of, it's important that we sustain life, but we didn't want him to struggle. Like, we didn't want to keep him alive just so that he could struggle. If he was going to live, then yes, let's keep going. But if it's not looking good for us, like, then we need help with that line. And so that was really important for us to kind of navigate that. But I just feel like my faith was so strong before I went into this situation, so that when I was there, I already memorized like all the scripture. When I was a youth leader, I had to memorize scripture. And so even though I didn't have a Bible with me, and even though I didn't have, the Bible app like we have now and all these tools, I was already equipped in my head with scripture. So I wrote scripture and posted it over his bed. I prayed a lot, and it's really weird. I talk about this in the book. There was a point in time where things were really looking rough. And I remember going down this hallway, and it was a hallway I went down often because a lot of people didn't use it. You find things when you're in a hospital. And I was in this hallway and I had my face on the ground and I was crying, and I couldn't get any words out at first. And I was just, trying to pray, and just all I could say was Jesus. Like, that's all I could say. I just couldn't get words out. And I just was so desperate for healing. And I said, so I have sometimes regrets on saying even this prayer, because sometimes when you speak something and you get an answer that you don't like, it can be really hard.
Yeah.
So I spoke the words, Lord God, please heal my son, but I want your will, not my own. And the answer was no. The answer was very clearly no. I can't describe it. It wasn't like a booming no, but I knew the answer was no. And, in scripture, it talks about this understanding that, like, you don't just this peace beyond understanding. And that is exactly what I had. That I cannot explain to you. I cannot tell you why I had peace with no as an answer. Because I certainly, looking back, like when I look back and think about that answer being no, it kind of makes me angry. It makes me angry sometimes, like looking back at that answer. But in that moment, the answer was no, and I was okay because I knew I was going to be okay. And so that alone pushed me through the last several weeks, because I knew in that moment, every day was just a gift. Every day was a chance for me to really, truly see my son, to take in every toe wrinkle, every little bit of him that I wasn't going to get forever. And I didn't want to forget any of it. And, even we had cameras, obviously, but we didn't have cameras on our phones back then. Mm. And so I have very few pictures. I have maybe 20, 25 pictures total. And I just keep those super close because that's all I have of him. But in my head, I have every detail memorized, and I won't forget that because I was given those extra weeks knowing that in the end, the answer was no.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's and that is in itself. I remember I've made notes on that particular point because it felt like a really important message in the book. A lot of people can live with that denial and think, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And I am quite often guilty of when I need something and I'll pray that'll be it. When it looks good. I hope that this job comes through. Mm-hmm. It's all positive. But really, you're obviously showing your commitment to the religion, and there was a clear feeling and understanding there. Did you ever at one point feel like, I know you mentioned how strong your faith was, did you ever feel any sort of denial or any friction with God?
Absolutely. Not while he was sick, because while he was sick, I felt like every single thing I asked for in prayer was answered. So even when, we were questioning at the end when we decided to remove life support, and then we were questioning in the end, and did we make the right decision, and we had prayed the night before. When we walk in, we just want to see him and know, completely have no doubts that we made the right decision to remove life support, because we were going to do it the next day. And I remember walking in, and his body was so swollen, he could no longer even lift his arms. He couldn't open his eyes anymore. And he just looked miserable. And it was like, okay, that's our answer. Very clearly, he is not okay. And we're making the right choice. We're relieving him from everything, And then our other prayer was that same night, they had prepped us that when they remove life support, it could be, they could gasp for air and it could be pretty traumatic, but that they cannot, we signed the DNR papers, we sign this, all these and stuff, that they cannot reintubate him. So once they remove the tubes, then that's it. But preparing us for the fact that it could be traumatic. And that was scary to me. Thinking about him gasping for air and thinking about how those last moments could be, I was petrified and truly scared. So that was one of our prayers, that it would be peaceful. And it was completely peaceful. He just, they told us to close our eyes. So my husband sat in a chair, and then I sat on my husband's lap, and then they put him kind of in both of our arms so that we could kind of both hold him in the last moments. And they had said, they told us to close our eyes as they removed everything. And he had, tape on his face his whole life. We only the first day did we not see tape on his face. So he had this tape on his face holding the tubes. And so this was the first time we got to see his face without anything on it, without any tubes, without, a ventilator, without a feeding tube, like everything. And he was so beautiful, even though he was so swollen and it was not the same kid in terms of his health. He was still so beautiful, and it was such an amazing moment to finally see his face. And I just remember crying and saying, he's so beautiful. And then he took just one breath, just like in, and then almost like a sigh of relief. And it was, I hate to use the word amazing, but it was amazing, because it was exactly the way I had hoped it would be in the end. Just peaceful and knowing that he was okay, just completely knowing. So all that time I was fine. Like, I didn't struggle in my faith, but man, after, when it was all said and done, it was really frustrating. And it chokes me up, like, thinking about it now, because even sometimes now I still get frustrated. Like, why did this have to happen? I know other people struggle with this as well. People who feel like they've made all the right choices, done everything that they're supposed to do. And then yet you get hit with this struggle. How do you move on from that? How do you pick yourself up? And that was something I really had to grapple with for a long time. And something I hid from people, because I didn't want, I had this strong faith this whole time he was sick, and I was sending out emails and always being very faith driven. And now I was just angry, and I wanted to, I didn't want any part of faith. I didn't want any part of who this God is, and someone who says they're a loving God, but who does this kind of thing. I wanted no part of it, but yet I didn't feel like I could tell people that, because I had put on this front that this was, it wasn't a front when he was sick. I absolutely believed in it. But after, it was so hard. It was so hard to be someone that everyone expected me to be.
Yeah. I think the easy line to say, because I'm guilty of saying this, we'll probably touch on this shortly, about my friend passing away a year after I was in the States from a heart condition. And the easy thing to say is, well, if there was really a God, then why has this happened? Why is it not everything good? And it's an easy thing to just say out. But the true strength really comes from, I suppose, your faith and being able to look at something and really dissect it and think, well, why? Let's look, because there's a plan. There is a grand plan. What was your relationship with God? Obviously, then became a little bit kind of, I don't know, you not questioned it, but there was questions that you wanted answers for. But what about the relationships that you had around you? So obviously a testing thing for your husband and yourself and your family and your friends.
Yeah, I think for my friends and my family, well, I really just pushed them away. I pretended like everything was fine. And then if things got hard, I would just kind of put up a wall and just push them away, because it was easier. It was easier to not have them than to have to deal with it and to have to explain, or to have, I don't like to be, I don't like to be coddled, and I don't like to be the victim ever. Like, I don't like people to feel sorry for me ever. So if I get into a situation where I feel like that could possibly be happening, I I want no part of it. And so I'm going to pretend I'm fine just to put up a wall that I'm not. Yeah, I don't like feeling that way. So I pushed a lot of people away. And because I was faking it and pretending to be someone I was not, that's really hard to have good relationships with people when you're not being your true self. When you're pretending to be something you're not really actually feeling, people can't be friends with that. You have to be your authentic self to have true, good relationships. And so I really had to work through some of my issues in order to kind of have those friendships. And I feel like some of the people I pushed away, I still don't have those friendships that I had with them before because I had put that wedge there. And as far as my husband, man, that was rough. That was a really rough time because we were both grieving yet so differently. I'm very outward in terms of with him. Like I wanted to talk about him. I wanted to be open with him. But then on the flip side, he didn't want to talk about it. He was very internal. He just wanted to build things. So he like built a fence and built a garage, and that's kind of how he deals with whatever, as he builds things. And so it was just this constant struggle because I didn't do, and he's such a fixer. He likes to fix things. He doesn't want me to be upset. So he wants to fix whatever it is. I think that's a guy thing, right?
Yeah.
Fixers. So he wanted to fix me and I didn't want to be fixed, And so then that was also the other problem, was telling him my true feelings because I didn't want him to try to fix it because he couldn't do anything to fix it. So then I would make him feel bad that he couldn't fix it. So it was like this ongoing struggle. And I really had to figure it out for myself. I just had to deal with it myself. And in retrospect, I should have absolutely 100% seen somebody, gone to therapy, been able to kind of work through those. I probably would have gotten through it faster. And yeah, I don't know. I think therapy would have probably been something good for me. But it was one of those things that people didn't do, or at least no one talked about. And I didn't know anyone else that had lost a kid. Like I knew no one. So there was actually, I won't say no one, because there was one other family who lost their son 3 days before we lost ours. And so talking to them really helped, but they weren't seeing therapy either. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. It's an interesting point you make because understanding is so crucial. And I think it comes with the age as well, because obviously you were both quite young. When I came over and you told me the story, I was only 22. And obviously I was like, that is terrible. I'm so sorry for what's happened. And I could understand, but I couldn't empathize. I'd not experienced loss of any kind. I think it's only until obviously after what happened to me and at the age I am now, I can really gather a true understanding of what's happened. So how difficult was that with trying to understand something yourself whilst maybe others couldn't?
That's a really hard question. I don't really even know how to answer that because it's just one of those things where people are not going to get it. And people say things that are just really hurtful. They're really trying not to be hurtful. They're trying to be kind and nice, and they're trying to help you. But sometimes it's just hurtful. So we always say, like, if you have someone who's lost someone, you don't have to say anything to them. You don't have to try to make it better because you're not going to make it better. You just have to be there for them. Like, sit with them, talk with them, talk them through it. But don't try to give them advice. Don't try to make it better because there is nothing you can really say that's going to, certainly not going to change the situation, but it's also not going to change probably how they feel about the situation either.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, you mentioned about being vulnerable off air when you were writing your book, but you almost had to do that twice, because you have to do it once with your close relationships, and then obviously again almost publicly, because you're going to be writing it in a book. Another difficult question, I suppose. Which one was the more difficult?
The book. The book was definitely more difficult, because I think I was, I've had people read it who are close to me who said, I never knew you felt this way. I never knew you were struggling with that. I never knew, When I was writing the book, there were multiple times that I was working on it and I just had to crawl back in bed. Brandon would get home from work and he could see that I was completely defeated and deflated. And I just had to crawl back in bed. And I remember one night I had crawled back in bed and I turned on Netflix, and Brene Brown. Have you ever heard of Brene Brown?
I haven't, no.
Oh man, you need to listen to Brene Brown. You will love her. And I was listening to, she had this Netflix thing where she's on a stage. She did TEDx and some things like that, but she's written some amazing books. And she was talking about the power of vulnerability. And so when Brandon crawled into bed, I was telling him, and I was kind of emotional about it. And he said to me, you need to be vulnerable in your book. And I was like, I can't do this. I don't think I can. I don't think I can share some of the things that happened along the way without hurting people's feelings and without completely exposing myself to things that I lied about. I felt like I had been such a liar in my faith, especially after losing him. People didn't know I was depressed. At least I don't think they did. I tried to hide it really well. I don't think anybody really knew those things. So I felt like such a liar. I had put up this block of what I was supposed to be, and I was not who I was. So for me to have to physically write those things out and to live through it again, because I had to go back to that person, who that person was, in order to write it well. So I had to relive all of those experiences again. And although I had a lot of them written down already, just because they were things I didn't want to ever forget, but to really have to relive after losing him and my thought process, and to go through that again. And then to know that people were going to read it, and strangers, sure, they don't know anything about me. Like, it was fine for strangers to read it, but to know that people I know and know me are going to read it, and to think, what are they going to think of me now? That's the whole, there's like this fear in that. What are people going to think?
Yeah. I found
it's vulnerable.
I found it the other way around. I found that doing podcasts and writing is more liberating, because I found we all went through the same thing, about seven of us as friends, and we never really spoke about it. And it wasn't until I had to face up with something that I said in one of the podcasts, actually, where Stephen, who was obviously, he was ill with his heart condition. We all assumed, he'll get a transplant, he'll be fine. And he was allowed to go home for a weekend before his operation. And he said, I'm going to have everybody around to play cards. And I was having difficulties with social anxiety and all sorts. I mean, that was the reason I started coaching soccer, because I needed to get better at standing in front of people and almost performing. And I said, I'll go. And then an hour before, classic me and what I used to do, he said, I'm feeling quite sick. I'm not able to make it. I'm really sorry. And everybody else went. And that was the last weekend that my friend saw him. And that I did see him one-on-one a few days before, but you never know when that opportunity is the last time. And that consumed me for so many years. It was really, really painful. And I actually had to speak this on the podcast for the first time. Yeah, it was almost there, shame and regret. I spoke it for the first time on the podcast of what happened. I'd let something defeat me and consume me, which I really shouldn't have done. And then I asked my friends to listen to it. I said, I've recorded this podcast and spoken a little bit about Stephen. And they were like, we had no idea that had happened. We had no idea. Why didn't you say anything? Why were you vulnerable? So I found it easier. It felt like somebody else was telling them, not me. Once that initial barrier was broken down, it was a conversation that we all had. and it was the biggest sort of lift off our shoulders in a way that we all had. And being vulnerable, that was so important. And I think it's really helping now with my writing. I'm able to actually speak about things because it was such a long time. It was maybe about 5 or 6 years I had this carrying around, and it wasn't a nice thing to live with at all, really. And that was, again, a relationship with myself that I really didn't. I mean, how did that for you once you became vulnerable to yourself? That big realization, that self-realization of, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to deal with this and process this. How did that go for you?
Well, I think the realization came before the book was published, and kind of working through that and working just through the experiences of, because for me, it was all along, I knew it was something I was supposed to do. And then I wrote it, and I remember I finished it on Mother's Day, and I just kind of said a little prayer as I was walking out of, I was at a coffee shop as I was of course, I love coffee. As I was walking out of the coffee shop, I said, okay, God, I did it. Now, like, let's go ahead and just close this chapter. Because I really didn't think it was going to go anywhere. It was kind of like, I felt like I was supposed to write it, and then I was really hoping that that chapter would close. It would just kind of go on my shelf and we would be done. Yay, I did it. I did what you said I should do. And so I did it. And I made the mistake of saying, but I will walk through any door you open. And not even, I want to say it was 3 days later, I get a phone call from a friend who says, she's a friend of a friend. And she said, hey, I am doing this women's conference, and I would love to have you come speak at it. I'm really nervous to ask you. I don't know if you're going to say yes, but I would love to have you. And I said yes before my mind could catch up and say, no, that's a horrible idea. Do not put yourself out there like that. But I said yes. And then a couple of days later, I had another conference. And so, of course, all this was pre-COVID. But, you know, it's so scary doing those things, right? It's so scary to say, you know, you were talking about regret and shame, and you don't even realize that you're carrying those things because it's really just kind of in the back of your head, and you don't realize it's a part of your everyday until it's finally gone and finally released. And the book, when it published and when it was like, okay, this is it, I remember that day thinking, okay, this is it. I mean, there is no going back now. I mean, it is out there. It is out there for people to read, and there is zero going back. I can't change it. And the story's out there. And I was not as panicked as I was leading up to it, because it was like, it's done, it's over, and I can no longer control what happens from here on out. And all along I've said, it's really not my story, and it's not Alex's story. It is a story of hope, and it is really just meant to help people in their darkest moments. Because although it is a story on child loss and us losing our child, I don't want it just to be for someone who's lost a child. I want everyone to be able to read it and be able to say, okay, I too have had dark moments. I've lost a job. My dream of this has dissipated. I've lost friends. I got a divorce. You know, whatever that is that's holding you back, keeping you in this space. I want the power of our story to bring hope. And there was actually a quote I heard today. There's a pastor named Craig Groeschel, and he's out in Oklahoma. And he said this: our lives follow the directions of our thoughts. And I was like, that is so true. Yeah. What we think of ourselves, that's the way our lives go. So if we have these thoughts that we are not this person, we can't live up to this, we carry that shame, carry that regret, that's exactly the way our life is going to go. That's the direction it's going to go. But when we have hope and we have that joy and we have that purpose, that calling, is we're finally doing what we know we are meant to do, it's a whole new direction, and it's a whole new path.
Wow. Yeah. There, that hit home. That was really, yeah. What a fantastic quote as well. You talk about your calling and bringing hope and healing to people, and that, I suppose, those phone calls was the first stage of the initiation, probably really shortest stage of the whole purpose cycle, because all you have to do is say yes. You have to take that step. It sounds really simple, but it's so difficult. And once you do that, you're creating, you're making that life of what your calling is set to do. So the creation for you now, you're saying you're speaking, you're blogging, you're still writing, you're teaching. How is that for you now, being able to tell your story like you are today, being able to spread that message?
I think I'm finally finding that joy that I was talking about,
Yeah.
because I'm finally in the place where I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And just because I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing doesn't mean that some days I don't want to do it. Because there are definitely some days where I wake up, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm.
This is hard and I don't want to do hard things, because it's a cycle that, continues. You're constantly reinventing, you're constantly changing things. Like when COVID hit and I had to readjust, and it was like, okay, I can do this through Zoom and I can do this instead through this. And so I was reaching new sets of moms that I would have never reached before, through different avenues, because we were now able to do it virtually. So I was talking to moms in California. I was talking to moms in Atlanta, Georgia. I wouldn't make those trips, especially California, but because now the opportunity to do it virtual is available, well, why not? So there's a lot of joy in suddenly seeing, okay, this is really hard, but we can turn it into something else. And so constantly there's going to be roadblocks. Constantly things are going to get in the way that you're going to feel like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this anymore because this is hard. But no, it's rerouting you. You just need to make a new way, try something else, keep going. One of the things that I spoke on a podcast last week, and it was a podcast for moms. And the thing is, we so often get stuck in our heads. We get stuck in these stories that we just tell ourselves, these stories of untruths. And the thing is, it can isolate you so much that you no longer even want to get out of bed. And my thing is, just get out of bed. Get out of bed and make your bed, because if you make it, you're not going to get back in it, but if you leave it undone, you might crawl back in later. But no, if you make it, you are not getting back in that bed. So get out of bed and make your bed and just keep going, because each day is a little bit closer to whatever that purpose is. So get out of bed and just keep moving, keep pushing, keep trying.
Yeah, it's that future you, voting for the future you and what you're going to be. You're showing an immense amount of discipline as well. And there's a quote actually from Simon Sinek, who I was really lucky enough to be on one of his calls last week. But he said, working hard for something that we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we do care about is called passion. And it doesn't mean that you're always going to be on top of your game every day, but deep down you're passionate about something, you want to do it. And forcing yourself, like you say, to get out of bed, make the bed, use momentum, and start the day right. And that's what I'm trying to do now with sort of channeling with my teaching and through loss, really. There's a quote that Stephen had in his phone that his parents found. And it said, if you're not making someone else's life better, then you're wasting your time. And that is literally every day I wake up and think, how am I going to make someone's life better? And I suppose that purpose you don't always discover it. I think quite often it finds you. And obviously, with a lot of your religious beliefs as well, you feel like that is a message that's being delivered to you. So how do you sort of help others then? Because there must be some really difficult situations where people might not be getting that message necessarily. They'll be in denial. They'll be saying, why has this happened? And may actually come to you as if you have all the answers. How do you respond to that?
I don't have all the answers, so let's begin with that.
Yeah.
I think just the biggest thing is allowing people space. So allowing them the safe space to be able to grieve, to be able to freely talk about their emotions and not try to fix it for them, to allow them the space to say, I don't understand. And when we give people the opportunity to truly be themselves and to be vulnerable with you, it is such a gift. It's going to be a gift for you, like for them to be able to open up to you. You're going to learn things about yourself, but you're truly a gift to that person when you allow them the space to do that. And I think especially with grief, there's no one way to do it. There is no timeline. You know, people expect you to just kind of get over it and to stop talking about it. But I know for me, and I'm sure for you, I want to keep saying his name. I don't want people to forget who he is. I don't want people to think of it as a tragedy, because although sure, losing him was hard, but his life is not a tragedy. His life is joy. His life, that was something really important to us. Laughter. We surrounded his bedside with laughter, to the point where we got in trouble by one of the other people, complained that we laughed too much in our room. You know, this is an ICU. You don't laugh in the ICU. But we did, because to me, I wanted his life to be surrounded with joy and laughter. And so I think we can be such a great support to other people when we allow them that space to have whatever feelings they need to have, and to remind them that it's okay and it's 100% their feelings are valid, and it's going to take time. To not expect that they should just be over it, because it's going to take time.
Indeed. And with that, we'll go to the fruition phase, which is basically, I think a lot of people might misunderstand this as getting a big paycheck because you've worked so hard for something. But I quite like to associate it with the internal, so the feelings that you get from results. So it might even be that you are after a certain promotion and you get that feeling. It might be helping somebody and seeing them come out the other side. And what's fruition looking like for you? Or if that's not really identified yet, what is that going to look like?
It is identified, and it does not come in the form of a paycheck,
No.
because I do not take any profit from any of my book sales. So we, despite how my husband may feel about it, we do not take profit. And instead, we funnel it through an organization we began called Hope and Healing Hearts.
Yeah.
And what we've been able to do with this organization is, for every Hope book we sell, we can give one away. So we have the Hope book, and then I've actually published 2 other books. I don't know if you knew that.
I did have an inkling it was going to be a question towards the end, but you more
Oh,
than
okay, yeah.
more than
So
welcome.
I have published 2 others. They're companion books for Hope, so they're more of like a book study, an opportunity for the person to truly reflect on themselves and to work through the process of healing. So from whatever it is they're working through, all the way to the end of finding purpose. And so one of them is geared towards child loss and allows the mother to write their story about their child. And the other one is specifically for anybody who's dealing with anything that they need to kind of work through the process. So with that being said, all these books we do not take profit from. We instead funnel it through the organization, and we work through with other organizations to give these books away. So right now, I think I just added our 6th partner. So we now have 6 partners. And so all of these organizations work with parents who have lost a child, and we get them the books free to them, 100% free. I pay for everything, the books, the shipping, everything, and get it to them. And they just get it to parents when they lose a child. So that the biggest thing, the big idea initially was it was going to be with hospitals. And so our first partnership was with Duke Hospital, where our son was. And we were able to provide an entire year's worth of books for them, because I just, the title of the book is Hope. And I wanted a parent to just leave with a little bit of hope, in their hand, a book of hope, knowing they may not read it, in in the next few days. They may not read it in the next few years, but whenever they're ready, it's there. They have it, so that they can just have a little piece of hope and know that they are not alone in their journey. They're not alone in how they feel. They're not alone in all the crazy things that are said to you. You're not alone in any of it. You're not alone, and you're going to be okay. And I think that's, for me, writing it, our son would be 15. Writing it this many years after losing him shows everybody you're going to be okay. You're going to see light again. You're going to find joy again. You're going to be happy, because it certainly feels like you're not when you're in those moments. It feels like none of that is available to you anymore, but it is. It just takes time. And so for me, being able to find new partnerships and get them books that I know that they are getting to other people, like that to me is the reason why all of this is happening.
Yeah. So. I mean, I must admit, I'm going to be honest with you now.
Oh boy.
This is the book I needed weeks after I lost my friend, and I would have never accepted it. I would have never accepted the help. It wasn't until I bought the book to support you, and then it was sat there. It was sat there, and then I literally had to psych myself up for a couple of days and be like, "You're gonna face some inner truth now, John. You need to read it." And I read it, and it felt so liberating. Reading it, finishing the book, and thinking, wow, like, it's not just for mothers, like you say, it's for people who've experienced loss and can't find any sort of reason of hope. And that was something that I really struggled with. I mean, I'm choking up now, but honestly, it was such a massive impact on both myself and what I'm trying to do in my own life, and with this as well, and finding purpose and developing. And you inspired me to start writing about my feelings, and this is what's sort of happening now. So I must, say, like, thank you for sharing your message, because it's so powerful.
Really. Oh, thank you. I love that. And just think, you were that young soccer coach who is so shy.
Yeah, it was crazy and very socially awkward, I must admit, at the time. And
I don't think you were socially awkward. You were just really shy.
I certainly felt like I was. I mean, I used to psych myself up in the car before meeting new people for the first time. So I have no idea how I got a plane on my own from Manchester Airport and flew halfway across the world. But there we go. You sometimes have to just do it. Take the jump and put yourself in discomfort, and look what comes out the other end, I suppose.
That's funny. Oh my goodness. That's so funny. I mean, I guess I initiated, though, because I walked up to you and said, hey, if you ever need a place to stay for your next hosting, we...
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the British thing to do or if it was the socially awkward thing to do, but I would have quite happily not asked anybody and slept in my car for a couple of weeks.
Oh my gosh! No, please do not do that. You'd be
sticky. Avoid the discomfort. But there we go. I mean, that's why things do happen, and they happen for a reason, and opportunities do arise. And it's just amazing to meet yourself and Brandon and hear your story. And it was great to hear his side of things as well in the book, and like how it's so like different, because I feel like everybody does go through that different journey, and you can sort of relate to different people, and because not one person's the same. I could certainly relate to some of the things you were saying personally, and then some of the things Brandon said, and from other people as well. It's just it's just really powerful to find, I don't know, like a person who has gone through that. You're not on your own, and there is something at the other side for you as well. In terms of, like, these are the questions we ask every guest. You've already mentioned your values, but we'll just go over them again. What are the 3 values that you live by?
Okay, so my 3 values in order are faith, family, and fun. Faith, always, that really is my why behind everything that I do. My family is my most important thing. I mean, that's what I've always wanted, and family to me has always been important. My family with my sister and my brothers and my parents, and then now having my own family and being able to pass on traditions. And one of your guests had talked about something. They had said something about, your purpose in your kids, and kind of had joked around that it wasn't that important. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, it's so important. The things that we instill in our children, that's the next generation. Like it's so important that we're instilling values and morals and treating people with kindness. I mean, I don't know about your side of the world, but over here, things are just insane. And people are forgetting how to be truly good people. And I'm just mind blown at that. And so teaching my children just to be good people and to treat people with kindness and respect, no matter what they believe, because that's the awesome thing about this world, is that everybody believes in different things, and that's okay. And respecting people no matter what they believe. So that, and then fun, always fun. Like, I want to laugh. I want to have, I want to come running down the stairs to Rocky and, challenge my soccer coaches to a Wii tournament. I mean, I want to have fun, and I want to have birthday parties.
Months afterwards. I'll never forget that. And certainly you instilled those values to myself, and I definitely have, and you can really tell as well when you get to know somebody what they really truly stand for. And it's been a pleasure obviously knowing you all this time, and great to have you on. Before we wrap up the episode, a couple of things. First of all, how can listeners who might be finding this year in particular difficult, how can they make the next 12 months the best yet?
Get up, make your bed. I mean, it all starts there.
It does.
Like literally getting out of bed and making it. And then the rest you can figure out, but if you do those two things, just out the door. Do you make your bed, John? I need to know.
Certainly do. Yeah.
Okay, good.
My morning routine. Now I journal, make my bed, and I put myself through something I don't want to do. Cold shower.
Cold shower?
Yeah. Hate it. But I get out and I think I can literally deal with anything. If I get something from my boss, I've done something I hate.
Thing I've ever heard. And then when your fiance said something about the screams.
Yeah, it is, honestly. It's bad, but it's something. I'm looking forward to the summer when it eventually gets warm here in the UK, because then it'll actually be nice. But
it will still not be nice. What are you talking about?
Middle of December, it's minus whatever outside. I'm getting in, and that is the thing. I mean, there's a guy I follow on Instagram, Candice, and he goes in the sea every day, and he hates it, but he goes, "We're going in," and he records himself doing it every day. It's accountability, and I love it. It gets me in that routine, and as soon as I'm there, it's go time. I mean, apparently it has some health benefits as well.
Sure it does.
Maybe not for the amount of worry it causes me before I go in. And it's
I'm like, it's making me anxious thinking about it. There's no way.
But yeah, it's warm shower weekends to reward myself, and that's what it's.
Oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous. Oh my gosh.
I look back on this in 10 years and think, what on earth was I thinking? It did nothing.
I know. Oh yeah.
I could have made my bed after all this time.
That's right.
Well,
I have a question for you though. Are you still making the cheese dip?
The cheese dip? No.
Did you forget?
I did, yeah.
Oh my gosh! I can't believe you forgot.
I was like, at first, I was like, and then it hit me.
The cheese dip that you could not eat because it was way too spicy, but then you had to have it on everything.
Yeah, incredible. You forget about the little things that you pick up on, and all of this. Yeah, wow. I need that recipe again.
Maybe you don't need the cold shower. Maybe you just need a hit of the spicy cheese dip every morning.
Yeah, every morning, as soon as I get up. Well, final question. And thank you so much for joining me. How can the listeners find you?
I have an Instagram account, and it is. Oh boy, it's one of those things where you're like
link in description.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, there you go. So I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I do have a website called CandiceDeLeeuw.com, and our organization is at hopeandhealinghearts.org. And I blog typically every Monday, unless for some reason there's something going on and I did do it. But every Monday I blog, and books are on Amazon, selling in the UK as well.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and we have a children's book coming out where it's being illustrated right now. Did you know that, John?
I didn't. No. Wow. Here we go. Exclusive. Well, for me.
We have a children's book coming out. It's so exciting. It is all about a little boy named Ben, and he has a bossy belly. And it's all about a child with anxiety and how him and his mom come together and come up with a plan. And it's actually something that we use on our son, who was diagnosed with anxiety a couple of years ago. And so it is really cool. And we're excited that it's going to be out, and hopefully a powerful tool for parents to help their child process what they're feeling and to know they are not alone. Because that is my whole goal in everything, is for people to know they're not alone in whatever journey they're experiencing. So
thank you. And a wonderful final message there. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing your message and being vulnerable as well. And thank you everyone who's listening, and make sure you check out Candice on all the platforms as well to continue to find this amazing message, really, of bringing hope and healing. Thank you very much, and see you next week.
Watch me not stop though.